Well, we're all about being really truthful, so we need to stop calling it expert right at the beginning. Let's clear that up. This is from the trenches. Folks, it's great to be with you. Quick background. Um, so I'm an operating partner at Summit Ventures. I've been involved with the portfolio for quite some time. I sit on the board of a number of our portfolio companies, and as of January, I decided to throw my hat in and lead one of the newest portfolio companies, a spin out of Duke University called Loci Health. The purpose of our discussion today is really to look at uh, launching a successful diligence campaign and a fundraising campaign. I'm going to share it within the context of Loci because I'm living it and there's some tangible examples that I can share. This is not meant to be a pitch for you to join the diligence of Loci, although we do have an open round. In terms of background, I've been in the healthcare technology space my whole career. If you're familiar with the industry, I worked at Epic right out of my undergrad. And then I transitioned to the provider side. I was the head of operations for a medical group for a number of years in Southern California. We were focused on physical therapy, occupational therapy, had about 50 clinics in the Inland Empire. And then about 15 years ago, I jumped into my first startup with a couple buddies and I from previously from Epic. And we grew that company to about 225, 230 employees. And we started to transition to a new leadership team about 2 years ago. And I was able to hand over the reins and take a breather before jumping into Loci. Um, this is, I would say, one other thing about the presentation. This is one where we have a lot of folks on the call that have gone through diligence as operators. We have a lot of folks on the call that have gone through diligence as investors. We have a couple folks that are going through Loci diligence right now. Thank you for being on. This is meant to be a collaboration discussion about what are best practices. So please, not just questions in the chat, but tips and tricks and things that you have found that have been meaningful in you making successful investment decisions. Please throw those into the chat. Um, this is an amazing community of folks that are constantly looking at pitches, and we'd like to curate some of those ideas today. So, diligence ready from day one. We're going to talk about a couple principles. The first principle is that a lot of first time entrepreneurs um, do not identify with being in diligence until they are ready to fundraise, and that is a huge mistake. Entrepreneurs should always be fundraising, and you should always have a mindset of building a portfolio of documents that help tell your story in a meaningful way. If you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And so the first principle is that you're always raising. You want to open a data room right at the very beginning and start slowly building up the collateral that's in there. And you treat it as a really a living organism. Every time you do a product release, you update your product documentation. Every time you have a major board resolution, you have a place to save it. And it becomes something that is not a 6 week ramp up to get ready for a fundraise. It's constantly being nurtured. I've raised about I've gone through seven Series A, Series B, Series C fundraises. Every single investor that has led one of those rounds said no to me in a previous time. They were all follow-on relationships that had looked at my company two or three times before they were ready to lead a round. And that just speaks to how important it is to have a diligence room and a deal room that is consumable and ready for people to look at many, many, many times. Um, you want to manage your investor pipeline like a prospect pipeline. These are relationships that are important. The mantra that we use internally is that companies don't invest, people invest. And so when you're thinking about either angels or VCs or private equity, we'll talk about some of those cohorts in a second. Um, Maintaining a CRM of your investor groups, knowing who they are and what their thesis, their investment thesis is, what their portfolios look like, having connections to people that are already in their portfolio. There's so many ways for you to get an understanding about who you're fundraising, who you're seeking funds from, and maintaining that pipeline and knowing them as intimately as you know your customers. So, for example, knowing that your which of your investors have a thesis this year that aligns to your company mandate, and being able to have a narrative, both who having a script for groups that you know are investing in your domain, and having a script for groups that are not currently investing in your domain. I've had a ton of positive interactions talking to investors that are like, you know what, I'm not investing in health tech right now. This fund is not focused on that. And then lo and behold, circling up the next year, their thesis has changed. My company has pivoted, and all of a sudden, we have a lot more to talk about. But the only reason we have an opportunity to talk is because we had a couple positive interactions where our deal room looked polished. They knew that our data was sound. We had citations, et cetera. You want to be nurturing in advance. The worst time to raise money is when you need it. You should be reaching out to investors and learning and having reps at telling that story really successfully. I want to show you real quick an example of a piece of collateral that I would recommend being in your deal room, called the Diligence Executive Summary. Oftentimes we lean right into a pitch, and investors look at pitches a lot. Sometimes those pitches are compelling, sometimes they're not. What I have found is that giving an executive summary for the actual diligence round that you're running is a helpful supplement to your pitch deck. So letting them know what round it is, how much you're raising, when you're planning to close, how subscribed you are, what problem you're trying to solve. These are things that they could get from a pitch deck if they take the time to get all the way through it. Not all of them do. And so giving them a nice clean one pager that says, this is a summary of our fundraise. And if you'd like to know more, here's a link to the deal room. You track everything, all those interactions, and um, work through the process with them. A lot of people start the diligence phase thinking that it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks. In reality, to raise a full round can take you can lean on those relationships for 6 to 12 months, and that's totally within normal limits of the fundraise. Um, Principle two: build for the reader. The number of diligence rooms that I've been added to, I'm on the screening committee for our local angel network. So we screen about 30 to 40 deals a month across different domains. The amount of disorganization that is put on deal screeners to try to distill down what your story is a huge barrier, and something that as an operator you should totally own. That is 100% a problem that the operator needs to solve. You need to make it as straightforward and as organized and as simple as possible for the people that you want to understand your story to learn your story. A couple key things to think about as you put through this outline right here is what I use for my deal room. You can see the folders are numbered so that they don't so you know that regardless of what folder structure they're looking at, it's not going to alphabetize into a weird order, and they're going to be trying to find where things are. I also give them a map of what is in each of the folders. So this is something that is in the first folder, the top line folder, where I go through and say, if you're looking for board consents, it's in corporate and legal. If you're looking, here's what is included in our intellectual property folder. It's the license agreement, it's trademark documentation. If you want financials, here's what we have. It gives them an ability to orient themselves to what they're looking for. And again, that's all in the spirit of helping it be as easy as possible for an investor to learn your story. I choose to use PDFs for as many documents as possible because you never know on what device or what program or whether they're going to download it. And you want it to render correctly. You don't want them to be distracted with weird formatting or they don't have the fonts downloaded. Try to anticipate the user experience of investor as rigorously as you anticipate the user experience of your customer. If an investor has to ask for it, that's probably a question you could have anticipated ahead of time. Not always, but particularly as you get into the later rounds of diligence, investors are really willing to tell you this is what would be helpful to learn. One question I got from an investor just yesterday was around market landscape. This is Loci is a company that is in a fairly niche market. I don't assume that many of the investors and family offices that we're talking to have direct experience with the problem that Loci is solving, and that's okay. And so I have to spend a little more time creating content that helps them understand both the size of the problem and where Loci is positioned in an already crowded incumbent space. And so I'm anticipating what the investors are going to be confused on, what words they might be hearing in the zeitgeist that they might assume applies to my story. And I need to help them know and confirm that. So this is one of a dozen or so different documents that show how my company is positioned in the market. Some of that is financials, some of that is functionality, some of that is competitors, some of that is partnership. Um, this is an area that when I was brainstorming diligence, I was going through and saying, this is probably a question that I'm going to get a lot. Um, you need to build the right tools for the stage that you're raising. It is not an expectation that if you're just getting started, that you're going to have a Cadillac version of a deal room. And likewise, if you're raising several $1 million, a Google Drive with a couple documents and a one-page spreadsheet of financials is probably not going to cut it. You need to build for the round that you're raising. In a pre-seed, Google Drive and HubSpot output, plenty. QuickBooks, no problem. Angels tend to want a little more visibility in programs like Dealum. If you're not familiar with Dealum, it's an online profile that a lot of angel networks use. There's about 50 or 60 different questions that you answer to flesh out your story. Um, and if you're raising a Series A or getting into M&A, a more dedicated virtual data room like Ideals or DataSite, DocSend, something like that is typically what people are going to expect. And again, it's not that they can't, that they won't invest if you don't have those. You're just trying to close the gap of belief that what you have is worth the check that you're asking for. And again, making sure that your documents are readable, making sure that you have a consistent naming and PDF structure, um, and that it's, again, you're looking for investor experience. I mentioned at the beginning that different investors ask different questions. Here are the four main cohorts of investors that I've worked with. Obviously, there's subcategories in all of these, and if you're an investor on the call and you don't like being put into a label, I totally recognize that. I feel the same way. There are some trends though. Angels tend to invest in you as the entrepreneur as much as they invest in the idea. Relationships matter. They often want some face time, and they're sensitive to deal structures in raising a safe versus a price round. Once you get into a VC, you really need to show a credible path to 10x, right? VCs make their money when you start hitting major scale. That's something that angels aren't necessarily looking for, but VCs definitely are. Once you move into the private equity space, now there's a huge focus on margins and predictable revenue and EBITDA. They want to see what operational efficiencies are you've already implemented and what operational efficiencies you have not yet implemented that would give them an opportunity for a return. And then if you're trying to appeal to strategics, there's a whole different orientation away from what are my core financials. Those are important, but what's front and center is how your product impacts the customer base that strategic is already appealing to. How do you build out the portfolio and the catalog of offerings that a strategic might be interested in? And so you can see just at a very high level how the different thesis and positions of these cohorts might impact the type of questions that you're going to get as part of diligence, and therefore what collateral you should anticipate. You need to make it compelling. This is an example of my actual pitch slides from version 5 to version 15 in my own pitch deck. On the left-hand side, you can see, well, in both of them, you can see that the titles are the same. As margins fall, overstaffing gets scrutinized first. That's a big part of our pitch and a big value proposition for Loci. But look at the boxes between the two. In my first version, I had narrative. The economics are flipped. Every process maximizes surgeries, specialties run autonomously. Those are true, and those are part of my narrative. I have a voiceover that's very compelling. But when you look at with the later version, where I don't just say the economics flip, I did some research and I showed that 8% of or Medicare anesthesia pay has gone down, like reimbursements have gone down by 8%. So I could say economics have flipped, or I can say hospitals are currently making 8% less for the same surgery they were doing 5 years ago, pre-COVID. I could say that every process maximizes surgery, or every hospital tries to fill their ORs, or I can say that on average, hospitals in the US are all running at 90% utilization of surgery. There's no way to juice your margin by adding surgeries if you're already at 90%. So I've gone through and changed the narrative to actual numbers. And I've added, you can see really small at the bottom here, I've added citations that if people want to look and see where I got my numbers, it's authoritative sources. Claude and GPT make it really easy for you to find statistics that are compelling as long as you do your additional diligence and make sure that they're valid. Citing numbers is exponentially more compelling than crafting a narrative. As we wrap up here, remember to sell the solution. Or if you're in a sales, you're selling a solution. On an investor, you're selling the thesis. The number of times that people have said, yes, I'm ready for you to look at this as an investor, and they send me a sales deck, I literally don't even open it. If you don't have time to craft a specific narrative for investors that is separate from your customers, then you're not ready to raise money. It's a totally different message to share. Don't hide your problems. Diligence is a time for you to build a documentation set that narrates the things that you know are weak spots. It's okay, for example, that you don't have a SOC 2 yet, but don't assume that not saying anything is sufficient. You need to have a document that says, why do you not have SOC 2 yet? Well, because we've decided to pursue a product that doesn't require patient health information, or we're not asking, we're using state of the art hardware and software hardening through Azure. Help them craft why you think that is a rational choice, and don't leave it up to them to decide whether something is or isn't important, or whether they caught you in a piece of information that you haven't thought about. Last slide. Treat an investor no just like a customer no. There's an immense amount of wisdom that you can learn from a rejection in the investing space. Um, on average, it takes about 40 investor meetings to close a seed round. On average, it takes 18 weeks, and approaching that with 9 to 12 months of runway is the ideal time. All of those put you in a position where you can absorb a no without it being an existential crisis. And when someone gives you a no, and you should pursue every interested investor to a no, ask them very candidly why that doesn't work. It doesn't meet our thesis. The upside isn't big enough. We were looking for a bigger exit. You want to get out earlier than we want to get out. You want to get out later than we want to get out. There's a lot of reasons why a deal has to look the right shape and size for an investor to make a decision to invest. That doesn't necessarily mean that your company is or is not investable. It just means that you haven't found the person for which the deal makes the most sense. I'm going to wrap it up here and open it up for questions. And Taylor, help me manage the chat.
Awesome. Fantastic job. Really appreciate it, Devin. For those of you who have some questions, I'll look in the chat to line them up. But in the meantime, Devin, how do you decide where a specific document goes in that list of 10 folders, if it could go in one, or if it could go in more than one potentially? So like market and customer information, or something like financial and governance, there's some overlap on those. How do you decide?
I've candidly, if I am thinking about that question for more than 5 minutes, I usually just combine the folders. I think trying to get it right and trying to keep it as organized, trying to split it out, is sometimes less intuitive to read than if you just have fewer folders. So and then I also take feedback from the diligence meetings that I have, right? If I send out a diligence link and it has all the documents, and then I jump on a meeting and they're like, hey, can you send me your financials? then I know that I labeled it incorrectly. If it wasn't really clear where to find the financials. One other thing I'll add, Taylor, and I meant to mention this earlier. I have a markdown file that guides through the different content that I have seen as best practice. If anyone is interested in that markdown file and wants to throw that into Claude or GPT and let them guide you through the creation of a diligence folder, just drop me an email and I can send you that markdown file one on one.
Awesome. Um, Other questions? You can come off mute if you would like. Barry, I see your hand up. Is that a question or a holdover from previous?
I'm not sure why it keeps raising my hand. I keep lowering it and then I forget to look. So no, sorry.
No worries.
One thing that comes up a lot is what happens if I don't have a lot of financials? What if I'm really early? How do I put together a pro forma? How detailed does that need to be? I would recommend that you spend quite a bit of time getting your financial numbers looking complete. This is an area that's really easy now. What used to be like 5, 10 years ago before AI, um, Angels and others did a lot less thorough, spent a lot less time than like a private equity group that had a whole team of analysts that could pour over it. But every single investor now can throw a financial document into Claude or GPT and say, like, what are the main problem areas of this financial model? And it'll present it to them right at the gate. And so you should do that first. You should take your financial document and go through the same scrutiny and say where are there holes that I need to fill? Where do I need to build assumptions to make sure that these numbers fit into the future that I'm looking for? And don't wait for the investor to ask those questions and find yourself flat-footed. One thing to be particularly aware of is it's pretty clear when your growth trajectory is unreasonable. It's like I'm going to go from 2 customers this year to 2,000 customers next year. It's like, okay, there's some believability and feasibility issues. The financial model is where a lot of those assumptions start to manifest themselves and where that tends to be the battleground for some of that feasibility discussion. It doesn't have to be with a financial uh, backdrop, but it often is. And so spending a lot of time getting into what your margins are going to be and what your growth rates are going to be, what your conversion rates are going to be, what your sales stages are going to be. You don't have to predict the future, but you can give a very thorough story around the the underlying principles and assumptions that you're making and have that really lean into a believable story.
It's a great point on the financials. I think that's usually one of the first questions that investors will drill into. Um, Devin, can you walk through your experience in the process of when to share the data room um, in the relationship that you build with an investor so that you don't over overshare initially?
Mhm.
What's your
Mhm.
process?
Um, Man, that's a great question. It goes back a little bit to this cohort, this slide. It kind of depends on who you are engaging. So many of the folks on the call today are, if you were to raise right now, you would probably start with these two groups up here, angels and VCs. Family offices kind of fit in the middle, right? They're a little more institutional than an individual angel, but they're usually not quite as, they don't quite have an investment team built out to the extent of VCs. They kind of sit in the middle here. What I usually start with is this document, a diligence executive summary, and a case study of the value that the company is providing. So I don't start with a pitch deck myself. I start with here's the high level details of our raise, and here is a success story. If either of these things look compelling, let me know, and I will do one of two things. If I have a diligence meeting scheduled, so I do diligence meetings as a group. So I invite a handful of investors that are interested in diligence to come together, send out 2 meetings for the week and let them accept one or the other, that type of thing. I'll extend an invitation to join one of those conversations. And then I'll also send them a link to our diligence room. And I don't assume that they are going to look at the diligence room before the meeting. So when we join the meeting, we actually have one today. If anyone is interested in digging into Losi's diligence room, we have a call in 2 hours. Um, the I'm not going to assume that people come to that meeting having gone through the deal room. Some do, and that's great, and they come with questions preloaded. Others are like, your one pagers were compelling. Where should I start? And so I usually have my pitch deck ready. I have a couple of the documents pulled up, and then I'm ready to tell that high level story again in a consolidated way and start directing them to pointers within the deal room. And then once that meeting, once they've participated in a diligence kickoff meeting, now I transition to one-on-one interactions with each of the investors that are interested in continuing. And I ask them point blank in that meeting, are you interested in continuing the conversation? Are you interested in continuing diligence? I pursue them as tastefully as possible until I get a no. Until someone says, I'm I've concluded that this isn't for me. And that's a normal part of fundraising. You're going to get a lot of people that say this isn't for me, and that's okay. You want to just get through that cycle quickly and start finding folks that are. Yep.
Again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I'm going to ask one more quick one, and if there's another one in the chat, awesome. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up. Devin, have you ever been able to turn a no into a yes in a due diligence process?
Yeah,
Someone
definitely.
says, no, I'm not interested. How far do you push them, or what's your approach there?
Well, so I think first having a headspace where this is not like uh this is not like you're at a fairgrounds going door to door and trick or treating with games. It's like this is a relationship that's going to extend. So when someone says no, this isn't for me, it's like that's great, that's no problem. Try to understand a little bit of why that is. Is it a thesis? Is it a timing? Is it a liquidity um issue? Any of those things. What I then do though is I consider that a success. Now I have someone in my network that knows me. Um, I've hopefully left them with a positive taste in their mouth about me as an operator and the companies that I'm choosing to spend my career. I find that circling back, sometimes people don't want to be the first money in. But once I have a couple investors that are in the round and the round is 50% subscribed, 70% subscribed, going back to that group and saying, hey, I know it didn't make sense for you 12 weeks ago. I just want to let you know, we've raised 200 of our 250. We've got 50K left. If you have some additional questions or if you want to speak to some of the investors that are coming in on the round, they've agreed to chat. So sometimes investors don't want to go out on a ledge by themselves. They would like to be with like the penguins that push themselves as a group to the edge, and like they all want to be in a group. So just letting them know that they're not alone, that can help a lot too. I've also had or investors that said no to me um, come back later and say, I'm at a different firm. I've changed our thesis. We weren't in healthcare, but now we are. And they only know to reach out to me because I've kept that channel open. I've made drip campaign, drip notifications. I kept that relationship warm so they know who to call when things change on their side. So yeah, it's just like a customer, right? Customers say no for 1,000 reasons. That doesn't mean they won't be good buyers tomorrow. Investors will say no for 100 reasons. That doesn't mean they won't be a great investor choice for you in the future. You just have to manage that pipeline accordingly.
Awesome. Great advice and great experience here, Devin. You have made due diligence make me sit on the edge of my seat for 30
High
minutes.
praise.
Like, amazing. So really appreciate it. I would suggest if you have any other questions or you're interested in learning about Loci, reach out to Devin. But appreciate everybody coming today and look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you.